Do you need me to check broadcasts at all?
All right. No, I think we're good.
Okay.
So Kip, man, great to see you. This is our first ever Q&A that we're doing live. This is going to be hosted on the Order of Man podcast platform like it always is, but we thought we'd try doing something a little different and host this thing up on YouTube. So if anybody's tuning in, this is why it sounds a little weird, because we've only done this, well, we haven't ever done it before. So this will be the first time. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. And we don't know if we'll have anybody show up, and we don't know if we'll have anybody ask any questions, but we came prepared to answer other questions if needs be. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Well, we normally do headlines. I've got a couple that I wanted to share with you today. And, you know, the first one, well, initially, because I talked to you over the weekend, we were texting back and forth because I think it was UFC 307. Is that right?
Yep.
307?
Yep, 307.
307, and it was a really good card, but beforehand I was a little bored and didn't have much to do that afternoon, so I actually watched UFC 1, and it was amazing. And I'll get into that in a minute because that was my first headline. But then I had a friend reach out to me today, this morning in fact, and he's doing a lot of good work. His name is Ian Went with Official Patriot Gear, and he's doing a lot of good work with helping raise funds for the disaster and relief efforts, specifically in North Carolina. And he started a GoFundMe account or a Give, Send, Go. It's a donation site. He started with the goal of raising $6,000 to help in the relief aid and efforts as a result of that hurricane. So he reached out and said, hey, man, this is what I'm doing. We're trying to hit our goal. His initial goal was $6,000. And then as of this morning when he talked with me, they were at $60,000.
Awesome.
And I looked a little bit more into it. And right now, in fact, I'm just going to hit refresh on this screen here. They're at $91,000 they've raised for these relief efforts. And he asked if I would share it. And I know there's a lot of guys who are listening to this podcast who we want to help. We want to be valuable. Taking work off and leaving your family might be a little restrictive for you. And if it is, certainly understand. But if you're in the position to donate a little money for these efforts, then I would highly encourage that you do. I just want to read really briefly what this is about so they have an idea. They've teamed up with a program called Aerial Recovery, and I'm reading this from the website. Their team of veterans and first responders is conducting helicopter rescues, reconnaissance, welfare checks, aid distribution, and debris clearance across multiple cities impacted by the storm. Every helicopter mission costs around $20,000 a day in fuel. And right now, a lack of communication is costing them valuable time, fuel, and resources. And he says that's why we're stepping up to raise $6,000. Their goal now is to raise $100,000 to help them get 4 Starlink units, 7 ICAM radios, equipment that will improve communication and boost their efficiency by 20 to 30%. That means more lives saved faster. And they're asking for our help about where we come in. And the beautiful thing about what Ian is doing with Official Patriot Gear is that every single dollar donated through this fund is going straight to aerial recovery and disaster relief efforts. He said there's a lot of organizations and a lot of foundations that are popping up where people can donate, but there's a lot of times where, 80% or 60 or 50% of that money is going towards recovery. In this case, it's 100%. So if you feel like you're in the position, whether it's $25, $50, $1,000, $10,000, I don't know what position you're in, then go to officialpatriotgear.com/help. So that's officialpatriotgear.com/help. It'll take you right to that page and you can make your donation. And Ian is going to be, I think he's heading down as of the release of this podcast on Wednesday today. So he'll be in North Carolina giving, helping, serving, doing what he needs to do out there. But Ian's doing good stuff. Official Patriot Gear, again, officialpatriotgear.com/help. So that's awesome. I was going to talk about UFC, but he brought that up. I'm like, this is way more important than UFC.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Oh, man, they're struggling. And then Matt Boudreau with Apogee Academy is doing a lot of work down there. So we've got a lot of Order of Man alumni doing really good work to help in those efforts. And ultimately, that's our job as men, to protect, provide, preside. And these are guys who are leading on the front lines of that.
Yeah, it's inspirational what those guys are willing to do, and how many people are rallying together. I even know Matt has been very grateful for how much momentum that they're getting, with donations and whatnot as well. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it is times like these where we put aside differences that don't really matter, and we stop talking about the bull crap that just is not real relevant in our lives. There's a lot of good that comes from horrific situations like this, and it's a good time to remind ourselves what is important, what's valuable, and how to serve each other as we should as Americans.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right, so should we go ahead and get into questions?
Let's get into questions. Even this is a little different because I posted on Instagram yesterday and I said, this one's a little bit for the ladies. I wanted to hear what questions they had for us as a way to provide them some insight that maybe they don't have or would like, but also for us as men to get a little bit of insight into what kind of questions they have and what they're thinking about that maybe you're not aware of. So I think this can serve both the men and the women.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first question actually is a little bit of it's a given. So I think I'm not sure if it was Rick or his wife, right? But the question around,
it's Rick.
Is there a woman's version of Order of Man? So let's just address that, because I actually do think that's probably a really common question that you do get around our movement. So let's address that one.
Yeah, there is Revitalized Womanhood is the name of the podcast and the movement. I've worked very, very closely with Gina Trimmer. She heads up that organization and she's doing wonderful work. I've known Gina and Rick for a very long time and they're close personal friends of mine. So guys, if you're listening and you're thinking, man, I wish my wife had something like this for herself, Revitalized Womanhood. And then if women, you're thinking like, oh, I wish I had an organization that had very much the same values that Order of Man does, but it specifically catered towards women, then same place, Revitalized Womanhood. And they've got it's called the Sisterhood, and that's more of their closed type organization. Like we have the Iron Council, theirs is the Sisterhood. So very, very closely aligned with what we do. And I've been consulting with them and helping them grow that business. So they're doing a really good job over there. Revitalized Womanhood.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know the numbers, but this came up a couple weeks ago with some guys within our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council, where we have spouses, right? So we have like the wives in this group and the husbands in the Iron Council. I'm curious, the growing percentage of that being present.
Yeah, I don't know what the percentages are. I'd have to reach out and ask, but yeah, it is different, trying to decide how to communicate with women to rally them together. I think women just do that naturally better anyways versus men. But I mean, I've been doing this for so long. Obviously, I've been talking about it from a man's perspective for so long that it's bringing that other side into it has been relatively new for me.
Yeah, totally. All right. Next question, 21 Dutchie. She says, first of all, thank you for doing this. Question, what brings you the most joy out of the Iron Council? So Ryan, just in case, let's just level set. What is Iron Council? Then what brings you the most joy out of it?
Yeah, so we briefly talked about it a second ago. The Iron Council is our exclusive brotherhood. So, you're listening to this podcast for free. You can join the Facebook group for free. You can sign up for our dispatch, which is our emails that we send out every week. I mean, we have a lot of content available for free. The problem with some of that is it's not always curated and organized and formatted in a way that allows you to actually do the work that you want to do. And then what you're left with is trying to sift through the information and then do it all on your own. And there's millions and millions of men who have been working on doing life alone, and it's just not working. It was never meant to work. As long as men have been on this planet, we have been banded together in tribes and packs and groups and villages and communities because we're better typically when we're together. I mean, I know there's challenges obviously that come with that, but if we're all on the same page or at least have the same goals and vision and desires, then we can march lockstep and get a lot more accomplished. So that's exactly what the Iron Council is. It's an elevated experience. We take the information, we curate it, we build monthly assignments and topics so you know exactly what you ought to be doing. We have programs and challenges that are offered. And the biggest thing, I think, is that we have accountability. So now you have a guy shoulder to shoulder with you who knows what your goals are specifically, knows what you're doing exactly to accomplish those goals, and is going to check in and ensure that you're on the path. Or if you're tempted to stray, maybe it's alcohol or substance abuse or viewing pornography or just making bad choices in general, there's channels and topics inside of the Iron Council that allow you to be accountable to guys. You know, guys every day posting in there about tactics and strategies they've used to overcome pornography addiction or to avoid drinking today, like they did, you know, the last 365 days of the year. So it's very, very powerful. And to answer the question, what's the biggest joy that I get? It's when I see somebody come into the Iron Council who has these challenges, and then he'll send me a message, even unsolicited. Hey, Ryan, I joined, you know, last year. My marriage was struggling. I was 50 pounds overweight. I wasn't real happy with my job, but my wife and I are doing much better. I've lost 20 pounds. I got a promotion at work. I'm reconnecting with my kids. I just paid off the truck payment, you know, fill in the blank with whatever it is. But the fact that guys are actually doing the work and achieving the results, that just brings me a ton of joy. And people a lot of times will put that on me. They'll say, thank you for doing this. Thank you. And that's great. I'll accept that compliment because I do know that we have done a lot of work to build up these processes and systems. But more importantly than that, how many men have listened to the podcast or even joined the Iron Council and have had no results in their life because they're not doing any work?
Yeah.
So if a guy comes to me and says, thank you for doing this, I will say, you're welcome. I'm going to accept that compliment. And then I'm going to put it back on them and say, thank you for actually doing the work to improve your own life. So this is not a miracle pill. It's not something that just because you sign up for our programs is going to change your life. But if you actually implement the processes and the systems and the frameworks, you'll see big results.
Yeah. I had the opportunity last week to join Battle Team Bruiser. They asked me to join their battle team call. And dude, like they kicked off their call reading their team ethos, which is not uncommon in the Iron Council. And I'm not joking, man. Like by the time they got done reading that ethos, the hair on my arms was standing up. And I was just like, where at in the world are men having this conversation?
Mm.
And it's rare.
Yeah.
And to see these 10 guys like-minded, focused on what? Not BS, how was a football game, not hypotheticals, literally spending a night for an hour dedicated with the focus of becoming the best versions of themselves, not for themselves, but for their families, for their kids, for their spouses, for their communities. And I was just, man, it was just, I don't know. Like I had a moment there where I was like, yeah, this is what it's all about. And you kind of lose sight of it sometimes. Like you and I, we just talk. I feel like we're talking like an echo chamber. I know people are listening to the echo chamber, but sometimes, I don't know, I fail to realize how impactful the frameworks are, you know what I mean, and the Iron Council. And then you get those messages or you get part of certain conversations and you're like, yeah, this is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it is easy to get locked into the business side of it or the movement side of it or the numbers and the metrics. And all of those things are important. We have to look at those things to make sure the movement is growing. But unless we stay connected to the men, and both you and I are very, very active inside of the Iron Council because we want to be.
Yeah.
Like I want to be involved, and I learned just as much from those guys as I hope they might learn from me. So it's very, very crucial that we stay involved, and you're always so good at that. So it's been a powerful thing, man.
All right, Cody James Holden, how has the adversities of America strengthened your faith? And what book of the Bible are you most enjoying currently?
Well, the Bible one I can answer. I'm not real good at reading the Bible, so I can't even really just give you a straight answer. Anything I told you would be a lie if I said I'm reading and studying this book of the Bible. You know, I've got it on my nightstand. I crack it out occasionally. I think I've restarted the Bible about 1,700 times at this point. So it's something I could certainly work on. But I'm not going to lie to you and say, well, this book is what I'm really focused on right now. I tend to be pretty intuitive just in life. And also with my faith, I've never really needed a lot to have faith in God and know that it's his hand in all things. I know there's a lot of people who have to have that, who need that and need to be deeply connected that way. And I think that's great. And I should be more connected that way. I'm just not, but I still have faith that this is the right thing. And we're all trying to do the right thing right by him anyways. So how have recent adversities in America strengthened my faith? Well, I think this is a great example, with this hurricane. I think a lot of non-believers will typically say things like, if God was real, how could he let this happen? Horrible, horrible circumstances and situations, some, unavoidable natural disasters, for example, and others. Well, even with natural disasters, there's breakdown in communication, there's breakdown in government assistance, there's breakdown in logistics and supply chains, and all of that should be addressed. So that is partly man-made too, and I want to be clear about that. Or how could a child be molested? How could a good God allow that to happen? And the reality is this: my faith says, my dog's chewing on the wheels of my chair right now. My faith is that we have free agency, and God has given us that gift. If we didn't have the agency to choose how we lived our lives, there really wouldn't be much need for God. We would just all be good and decent and honorable, and that's it. But we're not. And we're here to be tested, and we're here to learn and grow and develop as divine beings. And that means that we need to be free to make choices, which sometimes is horrible, because bad things happen, things that should be avoidable. And this goes to what we're doing here with this mission with men, is teaching men how to be better, but also teaching men how to protect other people and to serve other people. We're right in the middle of I think we're 28 days out from election right now. And guys will say, well, I don't want to get involved in politics. Well, you can't be a good Christian and not be involved in politics. I'd much rather have honorable, decent, good, hardworking Christians at the helm of our political system than non-believers and people who don't believe like I do. And that's not to say they can't do a good job, but I want more Christians involved because that's my faith, and I think that's going to lead us in the right direction. So I think we really, really need to get more involved. And then to the last point that I was going to make is, how has it strengthened my faith? When I see guys like Ian stepping up to raise 6,000, and instead he raises 100,000. When I see guys like Matt Boudreau, who are heading up disaster relief and aid, and not to mention the work that he's doing with the young men and young women across this country with his schoolings in Apogee, that gives me faith that we still will rise to the occasion. We still will step up. And we get a little sedated at times, and we get a little comfortable at times, but it's these hard moments like we're dealing with now that really remind us that we as men have a duty and responsibility, a divine duty and responsibility, to step up, to lead, to serve.
Yeah, totally. It's not related to like adversities in America, and my faith, but it goes to kind of something that you said earlier around agency and freedom, and how critical that is from a religious perspective. The one thing that has been really present for me of late around religion is principles are principles. In fact, I was talking with my son a couple months ago, and he loves Stoicism. And I think I've shared this already, where he's like, man, Dad, like Jesus was like a Stoic, right? And there's like a little dad tear, you know what I mean? Like he's creating the correlation. But the point is, this is what I told him: truth is gospel. That's it. Any principle that is transcendent and true in my mind is gospel. And so we can't have the conversations that we have in the Iron Council around the principles of being a great man and not be talking about religion. They're one and the same for me. Now, and I get it. We have different labels for things, and some people call that Stoicism. They'll call that their religion, and that's fine. But that's what's great about it, is we can have those conversations. And even last Friday, for whatever reason, I was on one on the last Friday afternoon call that we have in the Iron Council, and just all these correlations of religion were just flowing into my mind as we're talking. And And I know without a doubt, most of those guys, or not most, but some of those guys on the Iron Council, they're not religious. But I had messages from guys that weren't religious saying that the correlation of what you said around religion was profound for me, even though they're quote unquote not a religious person. Why? Because they're principles of truth. And we need to find truth wherever it is and understand how it's transcendent between work, our families, leadership, the gospel, all those
Politics.
things. Politics, it's all the same. And if they're not the same, that means we're giving passes or excuses or we're playing small in these other areas because we don't want to show up powerfully in those areas. And I think it needs to be transcendent regardless of how we interact. That's the problem. I mean, look at politics today. We have these built-in passes. Oh, it's politics. Translation. It's okay to lie, manipulate, and coerce. In what world is that okay? But because we've given it a label of, well, it's politics, then it's okay in that space. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the wrong messaging. That's the wrong
Right.
messaging.
Yeah. I think that's, and there's one other thing I'd say on that, Kip, too, is there's a level of maturity that comes with a person who maybe is a non-believer, but still sees the value in what Christians believe or other
Totally.
religions as well.
Yeah.
It boggles my mind. And look, I understand. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. There's been a lot of horrific events that have transpired over the course of human history at the hands of Christianity or Catholicism. I mean, that's right. So, you can't deny that. And I know plenty of Christians who are very judgmental and hurtful and nasty, quite frankly. And you can't deny that that exists. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the principles, to your point. And human beings are flawed, and we misinterpret, and we allow our emotions to get in the way and our humanity to mess with our interpretation of what is good and true and right. But if you just look at it objectively, I mean, look at the 10 Commandments, for example. How could you not agree with that?
Yeah, kind of a given.
You would think,
Yep.
but you put it under the guise of Christianity or some other faith-based label, and people are like, oh, you Bible thumpers, or your, what do they call it? Your sky god or your sky daddy is the thing I hear a lot. It's like, why would you mock the thing that's trying to perpetuate good, even though there are instances, and plenty of them, that would speak otherwise? The principle is what we're looking at here. And I would say the same is true for Christians when it comes to Stoicism, for example. How many times have you heard people say, you cannot be a good Christian and also follow the practices of Stoicism? What are you talking about? There is so much good in the concept and teachings of Stoicism that I think translate perfectly over into your gospel. But it takes a level of maturity to recognize that and discern and make the connection like you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's powerful, and then it allows us to be less judgmental of others individuals, see truth in what they're doing, and not contention, right? And just increase critical thinking. It's so valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Christy, Dim, and Denko, Instagram names. I feel like this question is asked a lot, but I never get answers that satisfies me. So no pressure here, okay? What are some standards that high value men have for women? I don't mean the obvious, like no OF. Oh, no OnlyFans.
OnlyFans.
Yeah, got it. Has a job, is feminine, loyal, Christian, etc. While those things may be rare, they should be a given. What are more specific standards? So what are some standards that high value men have for women?
It's interesting when you get a question like this that, she asked the question and then she qualifies it by saying, well, people have given me answers, but not one that I accept.
Yeah.
And then she gives 5 or 6 really good answers. And she's like, but those don't count. So I'm not really sure what the answer is here. No OnlyFans? Absolutely. So let's break that one down.
So
a high value man is not interested in not just his woman being on OnlyFans, but a loyal woman who's going to stand by his side, honor herself, honor the relationship. So I think what we ought to do is just break each one of these down a little bit more so you understand the principle of it. It's not OnlyFans. Is this
What it
a
means.
person who's loyal, dedicated, committed? Will they protect the relationship? Will they protect and stand by their spouse? Are there threats that a guy isn't aware of, or things that are happening that are shady? Is she sharing her body, even if it's just digitally, with other men? No high value man is interested in that. Not in a million years. What was the second one? OnlyFans. What was the next one?
So has a job, feminine, loyal, Christian.
I'm not sure has a job is really on there for a lot of high value guys. I think has a purpose or has direction. I would actually argue that a lot of high value men would probably be more interested in a woman who maybe isn't always on that career path, who isn't that boss babe going on and trying to take on the world. And I'm not saying it's bad. If it works for your dynamic, that's great. But I think there's a lot of high value men who would love to see a woman be a full-time mother,
Yeah.
a full-time wife, a housemaker. Heaven forbid I say that, a homemaker. But I think as long as she has direction and purpose in her life, because the red flag is
That's what that means in some cases. Yeah.
yes. The red flag is she has no purpose. She has no identity on her own. She's not focused on anything meaningful. She spends money like it's nothing. She's looking for validation from everywhere and anywhere else, which, by the way, leads back to the OnlyFans thing. She's looking for validation. Yes, money too, but also validation from a bunch of dudes who are objectifying her. Like, tell me how that aligns with the so-called feminist movement. That's not freedom. You're selling your body. Okay, what was the next one?
Loyal or feminine. Sorry.
Feminine. I mean, that's actually one we need to break down further. And I would say that a lot of the problem with what high value men are looking for is a feminine woman, not somebody that is going to be subjected to the whims of the guy, but somebody who's going to be accepting of his role as a leader. What happens is, especially when you have a bunch of women who are in the workforce or they've been having to go at it alone, is they begin to take on both the feminine and masculine role. And then when a masculine man comes into the picture, because that's what the woman says she wants, a masculine man comes into the picture and they're just butting heads, like you said, right? They are just constantly at each other because she won't let go of the masculinity. And I get it. There's a lot of fear that comes with that. She's got trust issues and maybe even some of that rightfully so. But unless a woman can learn to soften herself to a man, a masculine man is not going to be interested in that. That masculine woman will attract a more feminine man. And before long, you're going to find out, women, that you now have another little boy to take care of, not a man to partner with. So I think a high value man, and I'm speaking in generalities, but I think a high value man is going to look for a woman who is soft and nurturing and supportive and loving and respectful and humble and open to the leadership of a man. What's next?
Loyal.
Loyal, I think we kind of talked about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this person going to stand by me?
Yeah. And then Christian.
Christian. I mean, that's maybe not, but I think principled. I think it would fall in line with being a principled person. Does this person have values? Do they have principles? Are they willing to sacrifice for something? What is their compass? Like, what's leading them? What's guiding them? What helps them make decisions? What do they use as litmus tests to measure the things that are that they're the decisions that they're making? Would you add any other things onto that, Kip?
Well, what I would ask is, because I just think this would be valuable is, she kind of points these out as obvious standards. What additional things would you add on top of that, right? So being feminine, loyal, Christian, we'll skip have a job per se, OnlyFans. What
Purpose.
other
I would say
things would you
purpose.
add? Purpose. Okay.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important part here is whenever we talk about generalizations, right? Like immediately, and look at us, like skirting around the topic, right? Because my fear is what? Oh, it's going to be misunderstood, and we have to be really careful here. It's like, Oh, a man wants a woman that like will allow him to lead. Assuming what? That he's a good leader and he deserves it, right?
Right. Fair
No
enough.
different, no different than you would expect a man that is going to be loving and caring. Why? Because it's deserving, right? And he actually genuinely cares. And so there's generalizations that we're talking about here, but we're talking about a high value man and what is typically important to a masculine high value man. And I can't overstate the conversation of the yin and yang, the benefit of opposites of masculine and feminine. And we need to celebrate these differences. We need to stop saying that we should be exactly the same. This was one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had in my marriage, is realizing that my parenting and my wife's parenting was not the same. And it was okay. And not only okay, it was ideal. And it was beautiful and it was perfect. And we need to celebrate the differences between the masculine and the feminine. It's an amazing thing. And ironically enough, and we know this, is as men are more, how should I say this, stepping into their masculine in a worthy way, it promotes a woman to be more feminine. And I think it goes both ways. As a woman steps more into her worthy way of being feminine, it invites men to be more masculine in an honorable way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you brought up a good point too about, this is assuming we as men are doing our work. And there's some other questions that will allude to that.
Yeah.
That is a given. I want to make sure I throw that disclaimer out there, because people are going to listen to this and be like, well, what if he's an asshole? Well,
Yeah.
We've been doing this work for 10 years. And the other 1,502 episodes that we've done talk to men about not being that kind of person and being the kind of person that would attract a woman like we're talking about. So if you're thinking like, well, they don't talk about guys, that's all we do. So go back and listen
Trust
to the
me,
other podcasts.
we're beating them up enough. Yeah.
Right, for sure. I added a couple things here that I think would be in addition to. Number one is respectful of a man's contributions. So for example, if the man is a primary breadwinner, I'm not interested in a woman who's just going to go out and be reckless with my financial contributions to the relationship. That would infuriate me, because she's not respecting the hard work that I put forth. That's not to say she can't go spend money, but if she's going to be reckless with it, I would have an issue with that. Another one, when it comes to respect, allow me to help. Just allow me to help. Allow me to carry the bags. Allow me to pay for dinner. Allow me to do work around the house. Allow me to discipline the kids the way that I feel they need to be disciplined. Back off.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant by soften. Soften up a little bit. If he wants to help take the bags somewhere, let him take the bags. If he wants to pay for dinner, let him pay for dinner. If he wants to do the things around the house and build something, let him build something. It's okay. And we even see this down to little small things like doing the dishes or something around the house, doing laundry. Yeah. A woman will ask a lot of cases, I wish my husband would do stuff around the house. And then he loads the dishes, but he gets 2 fewer plates in there than you could as a woman. And you're like, I'll just do it. Back off. Yeah. It's okay. Or he didn't separate the laundry the way you wish he would have separated. It's okay. It's fine. You got to do another load. That's fine. You don't have to do 5 loads because he did the first 4. But be respectful of the way that he wants to contribute. Somebody who communicates well. I don't think a high value man is going to tolerate somebody who just doesn't communicate. That he has to guess a lot of the time about what's going on or what the problems are. High value guys wouldn't be interested in that. And the last one I wrote on here is that she is willing to express her love the way that he likes to be loved. And that goes both ways. I know. Yeah, a lot of this goes without saying, I think. Yeah. But if a woman can show up, and I'm going to talk more about this one because we have another question that hits on this. But if a woman can show him love, not the way she wants to receive it, but the way that he likes to receive it, she will be invaluable to him.
Totally. Man, we could do a whole episode on this, and like percentages of divorces and all kinds of things that really like start coming into play here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good question. Thanks, Christy. All right. Alicia McCree, thanks for doing this. I have a 5-year-old son with very physical with very physical energy. I love that. He is go, go, go all the time. He loves all things karate, ninjas, fighting, even a little too much. We'll argue on the maybe a little too much here in a second.
Debate on this one here.
He is quick to fly off the handle and turn to fighting. How can I help him learn to control his rage? I think knowing how to fight is great, but using it isn't the answer in every minor disagreement. Have you dealt with this with your boys? What would your suggestions be for teaching him when is appropriate versus when it isn't?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot. I know you do too. I'm like, this is a good question. I like this
Great question.
I'm assuming that she is a single mother. Would that be a fair assumption, do you think?
Yes.
We don't know.
I mean, yeah, but like just because of the way she's asking it,
yes, that's what it makes me
increase
feel.
of percentage is pretty high.
I could be wrong, and if I am, we can address it both ways. But here's what I'd say: number one, is there a 5-year-old boy who isn't full of piss and vinegar and wants to fight and have all this energy? If he didn't, I would be worried more about that than the other.
Totally. Yep.
So that's
so
the first
awesome.
thing.
So first celebrate.
Yes.
Celebrate what you got.
Yeah.
This is great.
So a couple of things. He's into karate and ninjas and all things fighting. But the way that she framed this question makes me think that he's probably not in some form of organized martial arts. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And what I would say,
he wants it, but hasn't figured out how to control it.
And so this is Christy or Chrissy?
Oh, sorry. Alicia.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I was thinking
We
the last
moved
one.
on
Alicia.
from Chrissy already. Yeah.
Okay. So, Alicia, here's what I would say is you're thinking that he wants to fight, so you need to get him away from that. And when I heard you say that, I thought you need to push him into that. If he likes to fight, then you need to push him into it, which means that he can start doing some wrestling. He can start doing some jujitsu or some karate, something like that, where he can actually get engaged physically. The reason it's important for him to be in that, especially if he has the propensity to fight, is as a person who trains martial arts, you will begin to realize there's consequences for your behavior. And there's always somebody bigger, better, and badder than you. And that will temper a man. Like the first time I went to jiu-jitsu, my instructor, he said, here, I want you to roll with this guy. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And he's like, just try not to get submitted. I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, just don't let him hurt you. I'm like, okay. It was this guy who's like 135 pounds soaking wet. And so I'm like, well, how do I go? How do I sit? So this guy I started in his guard, and he's like, you slap hands, fist bump, and then you're going. I'm like, all right, easy. I'm going to dominate this guy. Within 15 seconds, he had his little twig limbs wrapped around my arm and my neck, and he was choking me out. That was a very humbling moment to realize I'm not as big and bad as I thought I was, because this guy just absolutely destroyed me in 15 seconds. Yeah. And so your son will learn that if you put him in organized sports so that he can see, here's how I use it. Here's when I ease up. Here's when I go hard. Here's when I pull back. Here's humility. Not to mention having another man, and this is very, very important. This is my second point. He needs to be around men. If his dad's in the picture, great. If he's not, then get him involved in like a boys organization, or maybe there's other family members that have boys and you can invite the boys over and do an afternoon with just boys. Like, you need to have other boys and also men around. Get coaches and good people in his life, uncles, grandfathers, brothers into his life so he can learn from other men. And not to mention, those other men will temper him very, very quickly because they will not tolerate him doing that. Another thing, and Dr. Warren Farrell talks about this. I have a conversation with Warren Farrell tomorrow, actually. He talks a lot about the importance of roughhouse. Because when I roughhouse with my 8-year-old, every once in a while, he'll try to punch me in the nuts. But there's a consequence to punching me in the nuts. And that means first, I'm going to go hard on him, and it's not going to feel good for him. And then I'm going to stop playing with him. And he doesn't want that. So then he learns, oh, there's rules. There's unwritten rules that I need to be aware of so that I can continue this rough and tumble play. but get him around other guys. Go find a jiu-jitsu class and let him fight. It will make him better. I promise you it'll start to temper him.
A lot of what you're saying is at the root of this quote by Crystal Estrada. Children can only learn to regulate the emotions that they are allowed to have. They can only learn to regulate the emotions that they're allowed to have. So allow him to have them and deal with them and figure it out and experience it and all those wonderful things. And one of the things that Dr. Warren Farrell talks about too is like even conflict with kids on the playground. Like when they're fighting and arguing, you let them, because there's a big difference. And it kind of goes back to the principle that we talked about earlier, is the principle of agency and freedom. One of the foundational benefits of it is learning. The learning experience is drastically different when I'm left unto myself to deal with it. But when mom or dad swoops in and deals with the conflict between all the kids, they don't learn. They just behave. And then you avoided the conflict, so there's no conflict, but they never learned to deal with it. Let him deal with it. Let them deal with it. That is where the growth actually occurs, is in the yucky, messy, children trying to figure it out, not in our knowledge and then telling them what to do. They don't go, oh, mom told me what to do, so now I've learned. No. You just told them what to do. You rescued them, and they're just acting on your command. They didn't figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. Kip, as you were saying that, I wrote something down because I've coached a lot of young boys in my community, from basketball to baseball and football and everywhere in between. And a phenomenon that I see that's always funny to me, even if whether I'm coaching or even in the stands, is watching the boys' mothers. And I can see how visibly uncomfortable they are by watching a grown man get in their son's face or get after them or discipline them for making a bad decision. I've seen moms almost come out of the bleachers and confront coaches on the sideline.
Yeah.
You sit down, ladies. Sit down. I know it's not comfortable. I know you don't like it. I know that's your baby boy or maybe your last child. Sit down and just be quiet about it. Unless your son is in some sort of immediate danger, it's going to be fine. And you might say, well, he's being a dick. Probably. Maybe the coach is a little bit. Yeah. And so he's going to have to learn to deal with confrontational people. Or I watched one of the kids on my son's football team. He got upset after a play or a bad call. And he came to the sideline and he took his helmet off. He threw it on the ground, and the coach got in his face, and the kid checked him, like shoulder checked the coach. And the coach grabbed him and dragged him over the bench, sat him on the bench, and he says, you sit there the rest of the game, which was the right call. Yep. You don't get to do that to a coach, even if you don't like the coach, again, unless you're in physical harm.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult for women, and I would say especially single women, single mothers, to watch their baby boy get verbally assaulted, if you will, by a grown man. But that might be the very thing that he needs. Let the men do the work of men.
Yeah. And we know this as being young boys and being adults now. I mean, I know those coaches. I remember those coaches. and I've had moments where in hindsight, when I was younger, I was like, I hated them. They're horrible people or whatever. And then as I got older, I go, they were profound and they were highly valuable to me in my life. And now I realize, the benefit that they brought to the table because I'm more mature about it. But
I remember when I went to basic training in 1999, and it was me and two of my buddies from high school, and we played sports all the way through high school together. And man, we were really good friends, and we got to basic training, and I watched 18-year-old men, because now we're men, 18-year-old young men crumble, absolutely crumble at the slightest sign of adversity from a drill sergeant yelling at them or doing something they didn't like, or them being a little banged up or tired, just completely fall apart. And then I watched me and my buddies and the other men there who didn't fall apart. Those were the guys who were in sports. Those were the guys who were in competitive environments. Those were the guys who had good, engaged fathers in their home, who knew what it was like for a man to confront them and get in their face, to push through hardship and heartache and physical ailments and injuries and just make it happen. It's the difference was palpable. I mean, you could feel the difference, even just in the difference between the way those two groups of men walked. You could see it.
It's crazy. Kristen Conley, my husband is going through an incredibly strenuous time in his business right now. I know that I know him best and I try to think of ways to support him. But do you have any special insights as to how a wife can be supportive through times like this? What is going through his head, and maybe some big don'ts you see women doing in similar situations so I can avoid them?
Yeah, this is the question I was most excited to answer. And this is a very good question. And I spent some time over the past day or two thinking about the answer to this question. And here's what I came up with. Women speak the language of connection, and men speak the language of respect. So when a woman is having a hard time, what she needs is to feel nurtured, supported. She needs empathy. She needs somebody to listen. She might need a physical shoulder to cry on. She needs to feel supported because she's speaking the language of being connected to other souls that are going to help her get through this. That is not what a man needs. A man needs to be respected and appreciated. That's it. If a woman can respect her man, he will do anything, literally lay down his life.
And
he will do
true.
Anything.
Yeah. And
it's absolutely true.
I don't know if women really, like, I think they might hear what you just said and they think it's like this, I don't know, like it's like this great saying, but it's really not true. It's actually legit. Like, we all know it. Like, when you're believed in and you're respected, a guy will go through anything. It's fascinating. It's really interesting.
So let me give her a couple of examples. When your husband walks in the door, you put all of your other stuff down and you meet him at the door and you give him a hug, give him a kiss, and you tell him how grateful that you are that he went out today and he provided for the family. That's it. Hey, you know what? I love you. I'm glad you're home. Thank you for going to work for us today. Tell me about your day. And then when you're saying a prayer, maybe at the dinner table, you pray over him. God, we are grateful that we have our husband and the kid's father in our lives. We're grateful that he goes out and does work. We're grateful he comes home. We know he's struggling right now and he's going through hardship and we're here to support him, but we also are grateful for the contributions to our house. If he has a meal, like a meal he really likes, make him the meatloaf that he really likes, or those burgers or lasagna, or like make that for him. You don't even need to say anything. Yeah. If you know he likes something, do that. And that's at the root of like the go make me a sandwich thing. I know it's a meme and I know it has a level of disrespect, but also what do you do for the people that you respect? You serve them.
Yeah. And both, that's why men find purpose and meaning in providing. It's their form of providing service. And if it's not seen as that, then they're not going to feel respected.
A couple of other tactics that you could use, and I don't like the word tactic really now that I say that. It sounds like more of like a manipulation, and it's not what I mean at all.
Yeah.
It's just something you can do, is when your husband says something about the way that maybe disciplining the kids or something about the house or whatever, try to make reasonable accommodations to that and allow him to lead in that way. I'm not saying that he has to be the tyrant of the house and your opinion doesn't matter, but if they're irrelevant things that really aren't that important to you, go ahead and let that go. Go ahead and say, you know what, hon, that's a good idea. I'm glad you said that. And let him have that one. Because there's other things where you might not want to let him have, and that's okay. It's a partnership.
Choose your battles, yeah.
Exactly. We don't need to fight and bicker over everything, because every time you say something that is at direct odds with what we are thinking, it feels like disrespect. Even though it's not, it could feel like that. So if there's opportunities for you to be respectful towards what he wants, then I think that's a good move. When it comes to parenting, if he's, making those decisions, or he has something that's at odds with what you might think, maybe relinquish a little bit out of control to him, because that's a level of respect. I know he's going to lead us in a good place. But again, it's not really, he doesn't need as much connection as you might. So I would really focus on how you're going to show your level of respect that for him, for what he does for you in the household.
Yeah, I can't help but think of the principle, and I think this is true from a leadership perspective, but if you want to influence, you need to be influenced. If you want to influence others, you have to be influenced. And leaders go first, right? And so, and this is not even a gender thing, right? This is just a thing, right? The more I allow Ryan to influence me, and I accept your advice, naturally, when I do that, you'll, as a human, will go, well, what do you think, Kip? And then you'll be more open to getting influence from me naturally. It is just a thing. So, I don't know. Okay, last question.
I wrote a couple other things here, Kip.
Oh, yeah,
a couple
absolutely.
again, little strategies, and they almost sound a little sexist. So please take them for the way they're intended. But
Here we go.
Wear the outfit that he likes. That's easy. You got to put clothes on. So put on the dress that he really likes, or the pair of jeans that he always compliments you on. And by the way, when he does compliment you, don't say, "Oh no," just say, "Thank you. I wore this for you because I know how much you like this dress." That's the softness I'm talking about. Or the date night. Instead of the date night that you would want to do, maybe it's a date night that he would be interested in. So these are all just little things you're going to do anyways to try to make, you could say, oh, like vacuum the house, clean the house, or he doesn't need any of that. He just needs that level of respect.
I like it. Anything else?
No, I think that's it for now.
Okay. All right. Last question. Robin Turner. Why do you think some men feel threatened by women when they can do something he can't, or solve a problem he is unable to solve?
Well, let's see. Why do men feel threatened? I mean, obviously that just comes down to a lack of confidence. There's a level of insecurity there. I would also question on this is, are you sure you can do it better than him? Like, is objectively, is that true? Because it might not, and there might be some clashing and butting of heads. And that's where the softness comes in. If you want to act like a man and compete with him, he's going to treat you like a man and compete with you.
And he's going to compete with you. Yeah.
That's what he's going to do. If you can soften up a little bit and allow him to do what he wants to do, I think you're going to create a lot better of an environment. But to your point, all things, being said, yeah, it's just a level of insecurity. Or also it could go back to our previous question about disrespect. When a man feels disrespected, it's like backing up a wild animal into a corner. That animal is going to fight. And when you start disrespecting him, he's going to feel like he wants to fight. And so if you're belittling him or demeaning him or saying, hey, you can't even do this as good as me, and especially if you do it in front of other people, that's a big thing. And this goes for men and women, guys and girls.
Yeah.
Do not mock your partner in public.
In front of people. Yeah.
Do not. Don't poke fun at them. Don't joke about it. I mean, maybe there's some lighthearted things that are acceptable, but be very, very careful.
Yeah.
On mocking or belittling or ridiculing or sharing something that wasn't meant to be shared, because that will undermine a relationship so fast. But I think it's just a level of insecurity. And if you have a man in your life who maybe feels like this a little bit, and you're a woman who doesn't want him to feel that way, then I would suggest maybe there's an opportunity for you to lift him up through the respect you have towards him in acknowledging and appreciating what he does do really well. That'll boost his confidence, limit insecurity, and allow him to see that maybe there are some other ways that you might be able to contribute.
Well, and Robin, like, in this atmosphere and on this podcast, we talk often about men becoming men, grown men, working through, are they a man? Or being neglected as young boys, or not being raised in a household where they had a father. And guess what? Some of them are incompetent in areas that they feel they shouldn't be. So, like, yes, it's an insecurity thing, but also it might be straight up a skill thing. That there are areas where they feel like they get meaning, purpose, and value, and they're not there. And they need to shore up some things, and they need to develop and be more masculine and do a better job as a man. And due to the way they were raised, they're not there. And so not only this is like, maybe an insecurity, but like it might be a legit insecurity where, yeah, this is an area that really is touchy. And I think this is indifferent to sexes, but just be mindful of that. And it goes back to the public shaming or the joking around things that are important to your spouse, right? You don't joke around about certain things in front of other individuals, even if you think it's true, because it's disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just understanding your partner.
Well, and there's a lot of this is just psychology, and I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to make it sound like men are so sensitive they can't handle you, poking at them occasionally or correcting them. I mean, we're all capable of that. I'm just saying, as a woman, I would just be aware of it so it doesn't get too far. And when it comes to psychology, just the principle of lifting people up for their efforts goes a huge way, even if the result isn't perfection. I go again back to the dishes. If you bother him about the way he puts away the dishes, he's never going to do the dishes again. So don't do that. Just say, hey, thanks for putting away the dishes, and then put the other two in for the next meal or whatever.
Yeah.
Or things that he does, like let's say he's training jujitsu. If you tease him about that, I mean, a little poking and like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you take it too far, and you always say, oh, yeah, I forgot Tuesday night, you get to go do your thing, your silly little fight club. Like, you're just being disrespectful. He's trying to go make himself better. I hear this a lot when it comes to Iron Council. Oh, your little man group.
Yeah.
He's investing in himself so that he can lead the family better. Why would you mock that? But we do it on both sides of the table. You just got to be really careful because I've done it. I've said and done things that were meant to be a joke, but were taken too far or taken out of context, or, I said it in a bad way and it didn't land. Just be really careful on that stuff.
Yeah. This has been fun. I'm not sure if you paid attention to the live stream chat, right? Like,
oh, I haven't.
A couple people are like, hey, listening from, what do you got? Like Germany, McFadden from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Oh, nice. Sweet.
Yeah. It's
That's awesome.
Kind of fun, actually. So,
cool. There is another question, Kip, I think we skipped. It was a good question. It was on Instagram. It was about hookup culture.
I must have not copied that question or overlooked it, or maybe I felt uncomfortable answering it. So
let me pull it up here because it was a good question and we need to address it. So I'm going to pull it up here.
Okay, I have the gram up really quick. Let me find it.
Oh, it's from Miss Sarah Beth.
I don't see it on your Instagram.
Okay, I'll read it. It's a good question. So again, Miss Sarah Beth, it says, hookup culture has led men being so cynical towards relationships. They have become lone wolves and have no interest in building, investing in relationships. How do we change this dynamic? So when I read this, I think she has the diagnosis wrong. I think hookup culture is in some part, not totally, but in some part, a symptom of the actual problem. And to me, the actual problem is probably more closely aligned with the growth of the feminist movement over the years and how much worse it's gotten in relatively recent times. With extreme feminism, it's no longer about equality and equal rights for women. It's become an active movement against men. And so there's a huge population of our society that mocks men, that ridicules men, that puts men down, that demeans them, demoralizes them, talks about how toxic they are, talks about the bear versus the man in the woods, which one would you rather come across? And so it's this active movement against men. And in addition to that, you start coupling that with the idea that, quote unquote, we don't need no man. And before long, it's not hard to acknowledge why men aren't interested in being in a relationship with a woman who has that thought process. Hey, you said you don't need me. And even if we are together, you add absolutely nothing to my life. In fact, if anything, you take away, you detract from my life. You don't respect me. You don't support me. You don't uplift me. You don't allow me to lead because you're so busy doing it. And every turn, you want to mock and ridicule what I bring to the table. Why would a man get into a relationship like that?
Totally. Well, and I have
some more thoughts. I know you're chomping at the bit here.
Well, grab that same line of thinking and then have that woman raise a young boy.
You're right.
Oh my gosh. Right? You're not value. Your gender is by default a problem. Right? Versus embracing his masculinity and empowering him to show up. You're literally creating nice guys in that example. So damaging for young boys.
Well, and it's also interesting because the same women who perpetuate these ideas, they'll also be the first ones to say, where have all the real men gone?
Yeah.
Well, why would they show up for you? So now where does hookup culture fall into place? Well, we're still physical creatures. We still want to get laid and have sex. So if I can have all the benefit without all the headache, you can better believe I'm going to be pretty interested in that. And then, of course, that's connected with our over-sexualized society and how we're putting men and women against each other. And there's a whole other host of reasons why. But yeah. So here's what I would say. I have a message for both men and women, but here's what I'd say to women first is stop doing that. Stop treating men as the enemy. Stop belittling them or putting them down or not allowing them to contribute in a manly way. You have to stop doing that. You have a large part to play in the ability to raise men into righteous, capable, bold, assertive men, the kind of men you say you want. And it's the same thing with your sons on the point you were mentioning earlier. You have to get other men in their lives. You can't do it alone. That is not an indictment on you as a human being, but it is an indictment on your ability to turn a boy into a man. You cannot do it the same way I can't turn a girl into a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to go through all those hormonal changes and body image issues and dealing with bullies on social media like young girls are. I haven't been there. And you haven't been a man. So get them around other men and get them involved. I also have a message for the men here. And this was brought to my attention by Ian Smith. I follow him on Instagram, and he's a gym owner in New Jersey and actively fought hard against the mandates during COVID. And we've become friends over the years. And he made an interesting post the other day. It was very good. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said that there's a problem with men who alienate women and make them the enemy. And the reason that men can't get ahead is because women are doing this and women are doing that and women are bad and women blah, blah, blah. That's the red pill MGTOW movement.
Yeah,
he said that's really not, yes. And he said that, see, the problem with that is that same group of men will call themselves leaders. Well, if you're a leader, then you're required to lead. If you're a leader, you can't blame another group, an entire group, half the population on the planet for your own woes. Either that means you're not a leader or you're not leading well. So my message for the men on top of what Ian shared about this is, men, we need to lead well. And we need to show women and children what a good man looks like, how a good man shows up, what it means to be righteous, what it means to be humble, what it means to make amends for our mistakes, what it means to lead boldly and proudly and stand in the front. And the quote that I like, and I can't remember who says it, is deal with the blows of fate with equanimity. Equanimity means calmness and coolness and courage under fire. When we decide that we're going to step up that way, a lot more women, because we're leaders, a lot more women will say, oh, that's what a good man looks like. I've never seen one before. My dad was abusive. My husband was a loser. You know, the other people in my life are weak and timid and cowardly, and these quote unquote nice guys. I've never seen a real man before. At first, it might be intimidating to a woman who's never seen it. A guy who wants to lead, who's assertive, who wants to take charge, who's proud of who he is. And she might be like, this is a lot. Sit with it for a minute. Because I think if you see a real man behave that way, it might allow you to take a step back into a good, beautiful, lovely role of a woman and allow him to step into that bold, assertive, commanding presence of a man. But we're not enemies, and we both have a part to play in this.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, that was fun. To connect with Mr. Mickler on the socials, X and Instagram, that's at Ryan Mickler. And of course, you can join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. Any last words,
And the only
sir?
the only other thing I would say is, look, as men, it's our job to lead. It's our job to serve. It's our job to help where we can. And you may not be able to make it down to Florida or Georgia or North Carolina because of some traveling restrictions or scheduling conflicts, whatever. But I guarantee you've got $20 in your wallet, or 50, or 100, or 1,000, or 10,000. I know you do. I know you do. Don't go out to eat this week and take that 20, 40, 50, 80, $100 and go to officialpatriotgear.com/help and donate it there. Those people are struggling. Man, they're in a bad way. 240 people, I think, is the total count of people who've lost their lives. We've got a friend who's very connected to our organization, has done a lot of work for us. In fact, he has an employee. They have a shop there. An employee that went missing for a couple of days. They ended up finding her body 2 days later. Like, these are real. It's hard to put yourself in those shoes. Like, I'm so disconnected from. I can watch the videos on Instagram and I can see all the horrific damage. It's not the same. If you were there or you were impacted by it, man, it's gonna hit different. And I've been in situations where I've seen loss of life and really demanding and difficult and scary circumstances. I can tell you it's hard. And so if you can contribute $100 this week and that helps, then you are doing your part. And if all of us did our part, man, those people would be in a much better place today. So donate, again, officialpatriotgear.com/help. That's all I've got. Guys, appreciate you. Ladies, great questions today. Hopefully I gave you some good answers and I didn't sound too sexist with too many of those things and you took it for the way it was intended. We'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.